have some personnel matters to discuss. The first thing I'd like to announce is that, unfortunately, from our perspective, but congratulations to Brenda, who's going to be moving into private practice in March of this year, and she'll have some time off to do a little traveling and have fun. But I just want to let you know that really appreciate your service. You've been great. Never hesitated to give us advice, which is important. And from my perspective, it's always been good advice. So my appreciation for your service. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Also, we have one more person leaving, and that's Natalie White. She's going to go to Legislative Hall, which I don't see how in the world that has any more appeal than here. Not too many people, even people get paid to go there, don't want to go there. But seriously, we send our best wishes and our thanks for your service. And I always see her scurried about the day of the meeting, and so she's definitely making sure everything's in its place and that we all have what we need. And so many thanks to you, Natalie. And then, unbelievably enough, we got a third matter, which is terrific. If Lisa would come up here. This is a terrific thing, as far as I'm concerned, to have someone designated from our office to be the employee of the third quarter. So, Lisa, if you come up here, I'm going to try to read this.
You don't have to.
Congratulations. Lisa is a highly motivated, wonderful, super employee who's always, it goes on for quite a bit.
Thank you.
But it really does. It's really a very nice. It's a beautiful plaque. Look at this thing. That's right. Very nice, and I do think that it's important enough to read, though, Lisa. To be frank with you, it says Lisa is a highly motivated employee who is always willing to take on extra projects when the Public Service Commission is short-staffed, and new dockets that provide areas for her to learn new assignments. Lisa is always up for new challenges and has voluntarily worked outside her utility analyst role for the past year and a half to ensure proper assessment and billing for the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission is an appropriated special fund agency. By Delaware Code, the monies come from both the annual assessment of our regulated utilities and monthly billing docket expenses incurred to process the filings of our regulated utilities. This assignment is usually handled by our administrative team. Since 2014, half of our administrative positions were either vacant or held by new inexperienced employees. Making sure the PSC keeps its funding and billing current is an extremely important process for the state. In 2014, recognizing the limited staff available for assessments and billing, Lisa volunteered to handle this project and to train new administrative employees on this assignment when hired. Lisa has kept assessments and direct utility billing current for the past 2 years, while at the same time continuing to perform effectively in her role as a utility analyst. She has continued to research, review, and document utility applications and has volunteered as a case manager in an important $21 million gas rate case. She was also assigned to the Neighborhood Telecommunications Staff Subcommittee and continues to keep current on telecommunications issues and water waste cases as assigned. The PSC has recently hired a new administrative employee to assume the assessment and billing role that Lisa has been covering for the past 2 years, which Lisa is very grateful. Lisa has been meeting with her to begin an orderly transfer of responsibility back to the administrative team, all while keeping current on her analytical assignments. Lisa has also streamlined the assessment and billing process by creating Excel worksheet files that simplify and provide up-to-date information for budgeting purposes. Lisa recently accepted an assignment as case manager to our largest regulated utility, Delaware Power and Light Company, for its gas division's rate proceeding. All of her work assignments are performed in top-notch fashion and always on time, which can be very challenging since many cases have time requirements either by law or regulation. The PSC is very fortunate to have Lisa as an outstanding employee who will go above and beyond to learn and assist whenever and wherever needed. She exemplifies the can-do attitude that is so very necessary in utility regulation assignments and should be recognized for not only the proficient work that she has routinely accomplished, but the extra assignments that she has unselfishly managed for the past 2 years. Jeff Bullock, Secretary of State.
Well done. Congratulations.
I hope we haven't given too many utilities out there any ideas. We are beginning our meeting now. The first thing is on the agenda is the reading of the meeting minutes of February 2nd, with both the public and the executive minutes. Anybody have any changes or corrections to any of the minutes? We have a motion to accept the meeting minutes, please.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion to accept the February 2nd, 2017 meeting minutes, which were public, as well as the February 2nd, 2017 executive minutes? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I abstain. I don't believe I was present. Consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. Anyone wish to have any of those items taken off and put on the regular agenda, or any comments about them? If not, a motion, please.
I move the commission adopt the consent agenda as submitted.
Any discussion on the motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And the motion passes. Regular agenda, number 1, in the matter of the application of Delaware Power and Light Company, Exelon Corporation, etc., for approvals under the provisions of the Delaware Code. Everyone, welcome. Not everybody at the table. Mr. Geddes is next.
If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, the order that was circulated to you, I believe on Monday, contains all the comments of the various parties who had reviewed the order and made comments. This was obviously a long process, and I apologize for not getting this to you before. But with all good work, another review indicated there were 5 errors that we would like to correct, and to facilitate it so you don't have to search, I've just a little handout here that highlights the 5 corrections, one of which is very important because we got the title of Mr. Noyes incorrect, so we wouldn't want the final order to not reflect the proper title. But there were a couple other ones too.
Should we correct the language from errors to improvements?
Improvements, yes, much better. Or as my father used to say, much more better.
Thanks, sir.
You can share.
Thanks, sir. That's fine.
I'm sorry.
He was usually talking about the bottom line, though, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a banker. He was most concerned about a recorder and how much money the bank was going to make. So, if you go through your... Yes, absolutely. Sorry. The draft of the order that you have, the first change that we are proposing, and obviously this is for your review and for your consideration, and it's up to you as to whether you want to make these changes or any other changes to the order for that matter, because this is an attempt to reflect your deliberations through this process and to capture all the various actions that were taken by not only the Commission but the parties as well. But the first correction that we are proposing is on paragraph 30, inserting following the merger and removing the word presently. As I mentioned before, another improvement is to actually capture Mr. Noyes' title correctly, which for some reason was not properly captured the first time. and that's in paragraph 38. Paragraph 84, there's an insert there that deals with the Commission's order, number 8746. Paragraph 92, insert of $350,000. And then a typo in paragraph 94, line 6, substituting in for is. Now, I make no further representations about how many other errors are in the order, but I can assure you that many eyes have read it. And hopefully it's as correct as it's going to be, and staff supports the order and recommends your favorable consideration of it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom McGonigal and my colleague Joe Shell representing joint advocates. We obviously support the entering of this order as well. We also just want to recognize that this has been a very long process, and we want to thank the Commission for all of its work these last couple of years, as well as the parties involved, especially staff and DPA, who've worked incredibly hard on this. We do think this order memorializes what is a very good result with significant investments in the state of Delaware: energy efficiency, workforce development, economic development. These are investments that probably would not happen in the absence of the work that's been done here. So we do strongly recommend that the order be entered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGonigal. Ms. Ioway or Mr. Slater?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Public Advocate supports the proposed form of order.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions about the order or any improvements to be made to the order?
Mr. Chair, I have a request. I don't have any issues with the order itself, but on paragraph 90, there's a supplier and workforce diversity annual report describing efforts to promote supplier and workforce diversity. Question is, who can provide me the most recent report for DP&L on this topic? Paragraph 90.
Commissioner Gray, I'm sure that there is a report, and then we can arrange for Delmarva to get it to you.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. If there are no further questions, we will have a motion to address order number 9032.
Move to adopt order number 9032.
Is there any discussion on the motion to approve order number 9032? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Number 2 is in the matter of the application of Suez Water Delaware Incorporated for a general increase in rates and for revision to its general tariff.
Good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Good to be back in front of the Commission. Clark Collins and Morris James for Suez Water Delaware. I have with me Mr. Prettyman, Gary Prettyman, and Mr. Finicum of the company. We're here today to consider the hearing examiner's report recommending approval of a settlement agreement involving Phase 1 of Suez's rate increase filing, which was made last February in 2016. This would cover the revenue requirement, the rates, and tariff. The settlement agreements are encouraged under Delaware law under Section 512 of Title 26. All of the parties to this proceeding, the DPA, the staff, and the company, support the hearing examiner's report recommending settlement of the rate application. There have been no objectors. This is the first base rate increase sought by the company since 2010. It's almost 7 years ago. During that time period, there have been distribution system improvement, DSIC increases that were approved as surcharges, but this is the first increase in base rates. Under the settlement agreement, those DSIC charges will be reset to zero and incorporated into the company's base rates. On top of that amount, the settlement agreement provides for new additional base rate revenues of $3.5 million. This is a compromise amount. It is less than the $4.9 million that the company requested, and it is more than the $2.8 million, $2.85 million recommended by the staff, and the $2.4 million increase recommended by the DPA. It represents an opportunity for the company to earn a 9.75% return on common equity. This is less than the 10% return on common equity that was previously allowed to the company. But given an expected future increase in interest rates, I would say that it is a conservative rate, and it's consistent with the rate that was previously recently allowed to Artesian Water Company. Even after the increase, the company's average residential customer with average usage will pay rates that are considerably less than the rates paid by the other average residential customer in water utilities in Delaware, is Artesian, Sussex Shores, and Tidewater. The company expects with the increase that it will be able to continue to provide safe, adequate, and proper service to its customers. Settlement will save ratepayers the cost of a litigated or contested proceeding, which the parties in the hearing examiner concluded was unlikely to lead to a revenue requirement materially different from the agreed settlement amount. So with that, we would ask that the Commission approve the hearing examiner's report, which recommends adoption of the settlement agreement and entry of an order implementing that.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mr. Willard?
Mr. Chairman, it's actually my docket. Brendan Mayorak, representing staff. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Counsel for the company has summarized the proceeding to date. I'll also add that all requirements for public notice of this proceeding, including a public comment session that was not attended by any members of the public, was held. Staff did participate in review of the company's application and in extensive settlement negotiations. We were able to reach a settlement with the company and with the Division of the Public Advocate. The hearing examiner's report, which would recommend that the Commission adopt this settlement, is before you today with order number 9027. Staff would ask that the Commission adopt this order and approve the settlement agreement because it is in the public interest. The return on equity of 9.75 is consistent with recent Commission decisions. It will avoid the expense of further litigation in this matter. I will add that this is a phase one. The parties did agree to bifurcate a portion of this proceeding that concerns how the company is allocating its management and service fees among its various entities. So we've agreed to deal with the general rate increase application and then look at how the company is allocating among its various entities in a phase two. Part of the settlement agreement is that the rates agreed upon here will not be impacted by that phase two review. We do have a procedural schedule in place for the phase two, and we expect to be wrapped up by probably the end of June, if not sooner. So staff would ask that the Commission adopt order number 9027. I have 9027.
Does that mean you're coming back for the second public comment?
Unfortunately, I will probably be passing that along to capable counsel.
Please, everyone.
Thank you, Chair Winslow and Commissioners. The Public Advocate supports the hearing examiner's report and supports the settlement. I have nothing to add to what counsel for Suez Water and staff have told you already, so I won't belabor the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members of the commission have any questions of the parties?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I noted that some of your lost revenue in this request for rate adjustment is because of a large industrial customer, about 4% of your revenues, right?
Yes.
If you retrieve a large industrial customer in its place, what's that going to do to the rate of return? Ballpark.
Well, obviously, it would depend on the size of that customer coming in, and so depending upon the usage, all things being equal, we would begin to earn over the 975.
Okay.
A lot of factors would obviously come into play with that.
Just one interesting observation as I read through the material. I noted that you captured that loss, but I didn't see any information that addressed any leakage trends, which are losses over time. And are you improving in that arena? Do you have any issues with leakage throughout the system that could impact the rates or the loss of the product and revenue?
So Commissioner Gray, I believe you're referring to non-revenue water, which is an indication of leaks within the system, including the distribution system. And I'm proud to report that Suez Water over the last few years has really taken a keen look at this and has been able to drop their non-revenue water. Right now it's at 14%.
Okay.
That's a very good percentage in our industry.
Okay. In the future, it would be helpful, useful, and of interest if you would track that trend, just so that you get an impression which direction it's moving. But I have no further questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
may I note one thing? It's been called to my attention that the order itself does not provide an effective date for the new rates. It anticipates being entered today, but the parties in their discussions had discussed a March 1 effective date for billing purposes, and it seems to me that to avoid any ambiguity or uncertainty between February 23rd and March 1, it might be helpful that the order itself, I'm just trying to get it in front of me, provide in
Well, this was moved to two paragraphs. That's
yeah.
all. But just at the very end.
And perhaps at the end of paragraph 3, where it now provides in the sentence, the amended tariff shall be filed by the company with the commission upon approval of the settlement agreement by the commission, we could add the language, and the rates shall become effective March 1, 2017.
Ms. Mayorak?
Staff has no objection to that change.
Ms. Iori?
No objection.
Practically, how are we going to accomplish that today? Thank you, Mr. Connolly, for making that adjustment.
Thank you.
Well, I came back from the trip, and I had all these documents in my mail, and reminding me we have a rate case today. And I know it's really very difficult for a company to get a large rate case underway. And of course, I know the history with Suez and United and the loss of, unfortunately, the loss of industrial customers. So United has really persevered, and Suez has persevered and done well as a company, obviously, to their credit. As I was looking through these documents, I have to confess that we don't see all the bumps and bruises in the roadway. I guess sometimes it's a little smooth, but I was frankly impressed with the work of staff. Each staff member, when I got to there, what they've done, and also, obviously, the public advocate. made, found things which were a benefit to the consumers, and obviously, Suez did a good job of presenting their side of the case. I just wanted to acknowledge staff that I hope did a really nice job in this particular rate case. Of course, it's always appreciated, and as Mr. Collins indicated, the settlements are always the preferred course. The 9.75 is reasonable given the present circumstances. It seems like the compromise is maybe more reasonable, and so obviously I will support the settlement agreement. Do you have any comments? Other comments? Do we have a motion with respect to the settlement agreement?
I move that we adopt order number 9027, effective March 1.
Any discussion on the motion to approve order number 9027, effective March 1, 2017? No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Number 3 is in the matter of provision of standing office supply to retail customers in the service territory of Delaware Power and Light Company. And we have, I guess we have Jim here. Jim's here. Another comment on the water cases. Everyone does such a great job working hard. The company works hard, the staff works hard, the DPA works hard, and you get all these experts. I have to confess to a little bit of frustration that no one showed up at the public meeting, and there should be some Suez people here clapping for the result. That part of that aspect, and I don't know what we can do about it. Probably nothing, but it is disappointing that this process doesn't get at least some modicum of recognition for good work product for the consumers and for the people of our state. No more speeches. Thank you. Okay, are you all ready?
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Joe DeLosa. I'll keep it brief. I'm just here to introduce Jim Ledzelter from Liberty Consulting, with whom I believe you're familiar, to give a final public report on the results of the 2017 SOS auction. Okay.
Welcome again.
Thanks, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Winslow and Commissioners. I am Jim Ledzelter from Liberty Consulting. It's a pleasure to present to you our final report on Delmarva's 2017 RFP. This concludes our 5th year as your consultant, so I'd just like to thank you for entrusting us with this important work. The presentation here is an overview of the 2017 RFP, and I've also submitted a more detailed text version of the final report to Commission staff. I'll start with this brief summary. The total RFP, including both tranches, was for approximately 407 megawatts. There was sufficient participation of suppliers to ensure competition in both tranches. The RFP process ran smoothly in every aspect, and bids ultimately were, the winning bids were consistent with market conditions. Most importantly, thank you. Most importantly, auction prices for the year were the lowest ever for every customer class. The 407 megawatts was made up of 5 blocks of risky in tranches 1 and 2, 3 blocks of MGS in tranches 1 and 2, and 1 block each of LGS and GSP in tranche 1. This table shows the weighted average of winning bid prices for the RFP as well as last year's. Again, prices for each class are lower than last year and are in fact record low prices. Last year's prices were record lows as well, and these are new records. Risky dropped by 8.5%, MGS by 4.6%, LGS by 6.2%, and GSP by 10.1%. Of course, as you would expect, the lower bid prices will produce and are expected to produce lower customer bills, and this table shows that in some detail. The data in this table was compiled by Delmarva, and it shows the estimated monthly bill impact by customer type. The residential value was based on a sample customer of 1,000 kilowatt hours, and the other classes use a range since customers vary a great deal with respect to their consumption, their load or demand, and their load factor. So there is a range. But the column on the right shows that bills for all customer classes are expected to go down due to this 2017 RFP. As I mentioned earlier, overall, bidder participation was strong. We ended up with 2 fewer bidders than we had in 2016. We had the same number of eligible bidders and about the same in terms of the expressions of interest, the EOIs. But sort of at the last minute, 2 suppliers opted not to participate. It's not a sign of necessarily anything wrong. It just their portfolio didn't see the need to sell power in these tranches. So moving on, as I said, the participation overall was good, and it was adequate. And that is true overall. There's a little bit of concern, maybe concern is even too strong a word, but LGS and GSP did not have as many bidders as the other customer groups, nor as many bids. But the ends do justify the means, and the prices that were produced were extremely low, and in fact, record low. This table shows the number of bidders and bids for each block of each tranche. 3 bidders were winners of the 10 blocks awarded this year, DTE, Exelon, and TransCanada. All are regular players serving Delaware's SOS load. This table shows the portfolio of suppliers that are serving load in 2017's delivery period. For Risky, it includes the blocks won also in 2015 and 2016's RFP, because of course it's a 3-year delivery period. For MGS, LGS, and GSP, of course it's a 1-year delivery period, and all were won this year. As you can see, there's good diversity in the Risky class with 4 different suppliers. However, Exelon won all of the MGS, LGS, and GSP blocks. So in conclusion, the overall RFP process was run well. It resulted in bids that reflected market conditions, and overall participation was strong, although participation in LGS and GSP was less than we would have liked. Average winning bid prices were record lows for all classes. And finally, there are no glaring areas of concern in the process. This concerns the core of what I'm presenting today. Please note that I've also attached several slides that depict the energy capacity and the fuel markets. You've previously seen those in the Tranche 2 presentation, and they're also part of the larger report that I submitted. With that, I'll be glad to address any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? What's happened to Hess?
They have changed their name to, someone help me. I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank right now. I can follow up with that.
They had a pretty, a few years ago, they had a pretty good sized chunk of the play, and now they're out of it entirely. I was just curious.
Yes, I'll have to follow up on that. Players do come in and out. We end up usually having a core group with some new players and old players, and we see that every year. They come and go.
Exelon, are they going to look at the results of this auction and say, well, if we have the same number of players next time, we shouldn't be going quite so well? I mean, how are we going to...
I'm sorry, the question?
Exelon, next time, they look at the results of this auction, and there's not that much competition there. So how are we going to make sure that we get the best of those categories?
Part of what goes on early in the process is that we establish who is eligible to bid, and we get a sense of how many overall suppliers are going. What we try to determine before then, and we includes Liberty as well as Enernoc, who provides the bidding platform. They do research and talk to and survey the suppliers out there to not only know if they're bidding, of course, to make them eligible, but to find out what blocks and what customer classes they're interested in. We had indications that it was going to be more robust than this, and it's perhaps because of Exelon's presence and history of winning so many blocks in the past that others decide it's not worth going through the whole routine to be outbid by Exelon. So to answer your question directly, what do we do about it? Well, we need to monitor it, first of all, and probably talk to some of the suppliers out there and find out what they're thinking. Sometimes they're very forthcoming with, and they will give a comment that they just can't compete or that something just doesn't meet their portfolio. At this point, as long as there's at least one other, we've found that as long as there is at least one other, even if Exelon wins in that case, their prices are just are what we would expect in a very competitive market.
Thank you, Chair.
You bet.
Mr. Chair, I can offer from Uncle Google that Hess was acquired by Marathon Petroleum Speedway, and they will rebrand all of their gas stations from Hess stations to Speedway.
Could I ask a question? How about the trucks? That they're famous trucks. And what did they say? Very good. All's good with the world then.
They might be worth more now.
Maybe. That's a good point.
I really feel more comfortable. Excellent presentation as always, Jim. Thank you very much. I don't think there's anything we need to do.
Thank you.
Schedule number 1 is in the matter of the application of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation for approval of a change in its environmental rider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Bill O'Brien, Associate General Counsel on behalf of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation, and I have with me here today Matthew Evergam, who is a Regulatory Analyst 3 with the company.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is Chesapeake's application for recovery of environmental expenses associated with the Seaford Town gas site. This is the second year that we've requested recovery of expenses for this site based on an agreement that the company has with DENREC under its voluntary cleanup program. So what I'm going to do is put a witness on the stand, offer him, do some direct examination, offer him for cross-examination, and then we'll move his testimony into the record and ask to move the affidavits of notice of publication into the record, and that will be our case. So we are ready for direct examination.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you spell your last name?
Yes, it's EVERNGAM.
Mr. Evergam, will you please state your name and address and position with Chesapeake Utilities?
Yes, my name is Matthew M. Everngam. My business address is 350 South Queen Street, Dover, Delaware, 19904. I'm a Regulatory Analyst 3 with Chesapeake Utilities.
And what was your assignment in this docket?
My assignment in this document was to present and discuss the calculation of Chesapeake's proposed environmental rider to be effective for service rendered on and after December 1st, 2016.
And in connection with that assignment, did you prepare and file an application for approval to implement this new rate under the company's environmental rider tariff provisions?
Yes, I did.
And have you reviewed that application?
Yes.
And in connection with that assignment, have you also prepared pre-filed testimony dated November 1st, 2016, consisting of 10 pages of testimony, together with attachments MME 1 through MME 5 and exhibits 1 through 3?
Yes, I have.
And do you have any changes or corrections that you would like to make to your direct testimony?
No, I do not.
Is the information set forth in the application, the exhibits to the application, and your pre-filed testimony true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
It is.
If I were to ask you today the questions set forth in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask at this point for the application along with Mr. Evergam's pre-filed testimony to be marked for identification and moved into the record.
Without objection, any objection?
No objection.
No objection.
Without objection.
Mr. Evergam, will you please summarize the company's proposal in this docket?
Yes. In this application, Chesapeake Utilities is requesting approval to increase its environmental rider from the currently effective rate of .0001 to .0002 per CCF, effective for service rendered December 1st, 2016 through November 30th, 2017. Chesapeake incurred $93,679.26 of actual environmental expenses during the environmental cost year, ending in September 30th of 2016. This consists of consulting, legal, and other expenses related to the Seaford Town gas site. The environmental cost recovery mechanism calls for a 5-year amortization of gas costs, offset by the imputed deferred tax benefit. The amount is then grossed up for the amount of the Delaware PSC assessment of 0.3%. This is the second year of cost recovery. The company anticipates to recover approximately $17,808.49. This includes the amortized recovery for the first 2 cost years. The rate is then calculated by dividing the net recovery amount by the projected firm sales for the recovery year, ended in 2013 or November 31st, 2017. That is approximately 7.9 million MCFs. This results in a rate of .002 per MCF or .0002 per CCF. An average residential heating customer using approximately 700 CCF per year would experience an annual increase of approximately 0.01%. That equates to about 7 cents annually. During the winter heating season, the average residential customer would see an increase of approximately 0.01% or 1 cent per month.
Mr. Evergam, have you had a chance to review the pre-filed testimony of staff witness Jason Smith?
Yes, I have.
Do you disagree with any of his statements or recommendations?
No, I agree with them.
Thank you, Mr. Evergam. And before I turn him over for cross-examination, before I forget, I will ask that the affidavits of notice of publication for the filing of the application, as well as this evidentiary hearing, be marked as Exhibit 2 and moved into evidence. And those are the affidavits of publication for the News Journal and for the Delaware State News.
Any objections?
No
No
objection.
objection.
They're admitted without objection.
Mr. Evergam is available for cross.
Mr. Mulder, any cross-examination?
Just one quick question. What was the name of the site again?
Seaford Town Gas.
Seaford Town Gas? Okay, thank you. No other cross.
Ms. Ivory?
No cross.
Mr. O'Brien?
We don't have any redirect. Thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, going through, of course, an environmental rider. The purpose of that is to recover environmental costs associated with cleaning up a plant like this, as they said. Those costs could include investigation, testing, legal costs. Now, when we say legal costs, that does not include litigation costs, if there were any. Again, this is an application increase for rate from 0.0001 to 0.002, as was discussed. And the PSC opened a docket on this case on December 1st and ordered this evidentiary hearing today. And I would like to call Jason to testify about this. Jason Smith.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Hey, Jason, what's your full name for the record?
My name is Jason Smith.
And where do you work?
I work for the Delaware Public Service Commission as a Public Utility Analyst 3.
Okay, and were you the manager for the staff on this case?
Yes, I was.
All right, and back on February 7th of this year, a couple of weeks ago, as part of your duties and responsibilities as a case manager, did you file testimony on behalf of the commission staff in this docket?
Yes, I did.
And has that been entered into evidence today as Exhibit 3?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you prepare this testimony yourself?
Yes, I did.
Any changes or modifications to your testimony?
No, I have no changes.
All right. If I were to ask you the same questions that are contained in that testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
All right. And do you adopt your pre-filed testimony marked as Exhibit A as your testimony for the hearing today?
Yes, I do.
All right. What were your findings regarding your review of this application?
As I discussed in my pre-filed testimony, I reviewed the schedules and the supporting calculations for this filing, and I did conclude that the company had complied with and met the filing requirements that it needed in order to implement the proposed change. The changes to the rate schedule ER are within the parameters that are defined both by the company's tariff and the environmental remediation rider mechanism that was defined in PSC order number 4104 in docket 95-73, which was dated December 19th, 1995.
Do you have anything to add to your testimony?
No, I do not.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
Any cross-examination, Mr. O'Brien?
Oh, yes. I'd like to move into,
Cross-examine?
I'm sorry, I would request that his testimony be moved into evidence. Thank you.
No cross.
Is there any objection? Do you have any cross, Ms. Irie?
No cross and no objection.
Exhibit 3A is admitted without objection. Ms. Irie?
Thank you, Chair Winslow. Public advocate calls Andrea Moucher to the stand and asks that she be sworn.
Swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Ms. Moucher, would you please state your name and business address for the record?
Andrea Matcher, 29 South State Street, Dover, Delaware, 19901.
And by whom are you employed?
The Division of the Public Advocate.
What is your position with the DPA?
I'm a public utilities analyst.
What are your duties and responsibilities in that position?
Generally, I'm responsible for overall management of those dockets where the public advocate has intervened. This includes reviewing applications, testimonies, and discovery responses, selecting consultants where necessary, participating in development of positions taken by the public advocate in cases, and other duties as assigned.
And in connection with those duties and responsibilities, were you assigned to review Chesapeake's application for a change in its gas environmental surcharge rider?
Yes, I was.
Did you review the application?
I did.
Did you review any other materials in connection with the docket?
Yes, I also reviewed the supporting documentation for the expenses for which the company is seeking recovery.
And could you provide some background regarding the ESR rider?
Yes, the Commission first approved this rider by PSC Order 4104 in PSC Docket 95-73 to address environmental remediation costs associated with the Dover Gas Light site. The same methodology is being applied to recover expenses related to the Seaford Town Gas site, which totaled $93,679.26 during the environmental cost year.
Have you reviewed the company's calculation of the ESR rate?
Yes.
Has the rate been calculated in accordance with the provision of order number 4104 and the company's tariff?
Yes.
Do you believe that the calculated rate of 0.002 per CCF is just and reasonable and should be approved by the Commission?
Yes.
Why do you believe that?
The expenses claimed are for the purpose stated and are therefore eligible for recovery. I did not discover any error in the company's calculations. The methodology used complies with prior Commission orders, and there are no contested issues. I therefore urge the Commission to approve Chesapeake's request for a change in its environmental surcharge rate.
And does this conclude your testimony?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Moucher is available for cross-examination or questions from the Commission.
Thank you, Ms. Irie. Mr. O'Brien, any cross-examination?
No, sir.
Mr. Willard?
No cross.
Okay, that's the completion of the testimony, I believe. Any commissioners have any questions of the parties with respect to the proposed order?
Yes, I have one clarifying question, and it's probably more process. I think I understand the math, but if this is for recovery and it's a surcharge, does this recovery amount expire on a given date or come back to the Commission for reassessment once the recovered costs are totally collected?
It's a 5-year amortization. 5-year period.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yes.
No further questions.
If there are no further questions, may we have a motion with respect to proposed order number 9030?
Motion to approve order number 9030.
I second.
Any discussion on the motion to approve order number 9030? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Next item is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to make any comments to the health service? I don't think Mr. Moy. Yes, we have one. Mr. Shell, come on forward.
Mr. Chairman, and I'm not here as a member of the public, but I realize that I misspoke in response to Commissioner Gray's question earlier, and I wanted to correct the record on that. Commissioner Gray asked about the supplier diversity reports that are going to be done pursuant to Order 9032, and I said we would get them this past years. It turns out that the first one is due April 1 of 2017 for calendar year 2016, and I misspoke, and I was thinking of the more general diversity reports that both of the companies do on a company-wide level, but I wanted to clarify that that report is due April 1, and we will ensure that the applicants get you a copy of it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Shell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Howard?
Chairman Winslow, Commissioners, wanted to make you aware that we have a wee bit of a conflict going on March the 7th. Perhaps you've heard that there was a Delmarva rate case filed, and the current procedural schedule calls for an evidentiary hearing to be held at the Carville State Office Building in Wilmington starting on March the 7th, currently scheduled for the 7th, 8th, and 9th as needed, starting at 10 a.m. that morning. We also have here the commission meeting, which will be scheduled for that same day, starting at 1 o'clock here in Dover. So unfortunately, I would imagine you won't be at the evidentiary hearing, but I would like to at least make you aware that Mr. Hartigan has agreed to be here as acting executive director, and will make sure that everything flows smoothly as we go through the March 7th meeting. Just wanted to, get that out there early on so that you were aware of that. Unfortunately, the month of February is rolling to an end. If you missed the flowers and the hearts and the candy and everything for your Valentine, it's too late now. However, I would advise that if you're into kite flying, March is coming up, and it'll be a good opportunity to get your PSC kites. We'll probably have a sale on them later this week.
About drones.
With that, I have nothing further to report, Chairman Winslow. Thank you for your indulgence.
Winslow, with respect to the March 7th hearing, unfortunately, the DDA only has one lawyer, so we probably won't be represented at that meeting. I would hope that there's nothing contested that is going to be on the docket for that, the agenda for that meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. I'm sure that Mr. Howard's given considerable thought to what will be on the agenda.
That could be taken two ways.
We have a meeting on March 28th as well. Okay, I believe that's the end. Thank you all very much. The meeting is adjourned.